Think you can take on a royal guard? Marcus did. Now he's missing teeth and facing assault charges. We'll break down the exact moment this bully realized he'd made a terrible mistake, and why picking fights with trained soldiers never ends well. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and like the video. The bustling crowd outside Buckingham Palace parted as Marcus bulldozed his way through. His massive frame, adorned with crude tattoos and rippling muscles, stood in stark contrast to the eager tourists snapping photos. The air crackled with tension, his presence disrupting the orderly atmosphere. Marcus's eyes narrowed as he scanned the area, sneering at families posing for selfies. The brass knuckles in his pocket clinked softly, a reminder of the violence simmering beneath the surface. He felt contempt for the palace and everything it represented: wealth, privilege, and a system that had never done him any favors. As he shoved forward, unease spread through the crowd. Parents pulled children closer, conversations died down, and people gave Marcus a wide berth. His aggressive behavior was impossible to ignore, a dark cloud threatening to unleash a storm. Marcus's gaze settled on his target, a royal guard standing near the palace gates. The guard's rigid posture and impassive expression fueled Marcus's frustration. Yet beneath the stoic facade, there was a subtle readiness in the guard's stance. With a predatory grin, Marcus approached. The crowd's anxiety intensified, sensing the impending confrontation. Some backed away while others watched, morbid curiosity keeping them rooted in place. The guard remained perfectly still, eyes fixed ahead. This lack of reaction infuriated Marcus further. He was used to people cowering in fear, but this guard acted as if he didn't exist. "Oi, tin soldier!" Marcus bellowed. "What's the matter? Cat got your tongue?" He leaned in close, his breath hot on the guard's face. The guard's nostrils flared almost imperceptibly. Marcus continued his taunts, each insult more vulgar than the last. The guard's silence drove Marcus into a frenzy, his face reddening. The brass knuckles felt heavier, calling out to be used. Just as the situation seemed about to explode, a subtle shift occurred. Though the guard's expression remained impassive, something changed in his eyes. A flicker of recognition, gone in an instant. Time stood still. The crowd held its breath, waiting. The air crackled with potential energy. Suddenly, Marcus's fist shot out, brass knuckles glinting. The crowd gasped, expecting a brutal assault. But in that split second, something extraordinary happened. The guard's training kicked in. With fluid motion, he deflected Marcus's punch and countered with a swift, precise strike. The sound of Marcus's teeth hitting the pavement was audible, even over the shocked exclamations of the crowd. The crowd's stunned silence was broken only by the soft rustle of the guard's immaculate uniform as he resumed his stance. His polished brass buttons gleamed in the sunlight, each one a silent testimony to years of rigorous training and hidden strength. The guard's eyes remained fixed on a distant point, but a subtle tension in his jaw revealed a depth of experience that went far beyond the palace gates. Marcus, still reeling from the unexpected counter, found himself face to face with a living statue. Frustration bubbled up inside the thug as he realized his usual intimidation tactics were falling flat. He circled the guard like a predator, his voice growing louder and more personal with each taunt. "What's the matter, tin soldier? Too scared to look me in the eye?" Marcus sneered, his breath hot on the guard's cheek. The guard's gaze never wavered, his composure unbreakable. As Marcus hurled insults, the guard's mind flashed to a rain-soaked battlefield. The echo of gunfire mixed with the thug's taunts, reinforcing the guard's resolve. His breathing remained steady, each breath a silent mantra that kept him centered and ready for action. The guard's uniform told a story that Marcus couldn't read. Military medals nestled among the crisp folds, representing acts of bravery and unwavering commitment to duty. These weren't mere decorations, they were hard-earned badges of honor that spoke volumes about the man behind the uniform. A group of school children on a field trip watched with fascination. Their teacher, a former military man, quietly explained the significance of the guards' medals. "Those aren't just for show," he whispered. "Each one tells a story of courage and sacrifice." The children's perception of strength began to shift, recognizing the power of lived experience over surface appearances. Marcus's frustration reached a boiling point as the guard's composure remained unbroken. The thug's face reddened, veins bulging in his neck as he unleashed increasingly vulgar insults. Yet with each verbal blow, the guard seemed to grow calmer, his stillness a maddening counterpoint to Marcus's rage. As Marcus's tirade peaked, something shifted in the guard's demeanor. It wasn't a grand gesture, just a slight narrowing of the eyes, a barely perceptible tightening of his grip on his ceremonial rifle. To those watching closely, it was as if a switch had been flipped. The guard was no longer simply enduring. He was preparing to meet the challenge. The change was not lost on Marcus. For a fleeting moment, doubt crossed his face. He had come looking for an easy target, a way to prove his dominance. Instead, he found himself facing an opponent whose strength ran far deeper than his own. In that moment of hesitation, the balance of power shifted. The guard hadn't moved or spoken, but his very stillness now radiated an energy that made Marcus take an involuntary step back. The crowd held its collective breath, sensing that the confrontation was reaching its climax. Marcus's muscles coiled, his eyes narrowing with a dangerous glint. The moment of decision had arrived. His fist, adorned with brass knuckles, pulled back like a loaded spring. The crowd held its collective breath, sensing the impending violence. Time seemed to slow as Marcus's fist hurtled towards the guard's face. The punch, wild and uncontrolled, betrayed Marcus's lack of training. It was a haymaker, thrown with all his might but telegraphing his intentions. To the untrained eye, it looked powerful, but to those who knew better, it was a rookie mistake. The guard's stillness masked a flurry of micro-reactions. His weight shifted subtly, his muscles tensed imperceptibly. His eyes, sharp and focused, tracked the incoming fist with precision. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Children clutched their parents' hands, tourists fumbled with their phones, and veterans watched with knowing looks. They recognized the telltale signs of a trained fighter in the guard's composure. The contrast between Marcus's wild swing and the guard's composed stance was stark. Marcus attacked with brute force, his face contorted with rage. The guard remained calm, his breathing steady and controlled. It was the difference between a street brawler and a disciplined warrior. In that split second, the guard's mind raced through his options. Years of combat training allowed him to process the situation with remarkable clarity. He could dodge, he could counter, but he made a different choice, one that would demonstrate the true meaning of strength. The punch landed, connecting squarely with the guard's jaw. Yet, defying expectations, the guard remained standing. His head snapped to the side, but his feet stayed planted firmly. He absorbed the punch, his body dissipating the force in a way that only years of training could achieve. Marcus stumbled back, his eyes wide with disbelief. The crowd's gasps turned to murmurs of amazement. The guard slowly turned his head back, his expression unchanged save for a small trickle of blood at the corner of his mouth. The aftermath was a study in contrasts. Marcus, the aggressor, now looked uncertain and confused. His bravado had evaporated, replaced by the realization that he had severely underestimated his opponent. The guard, who moments ago had seemed vulnerable, now radiated an aura of indomitable strength. Marcus's shock was palpable. He had thrown everything he had into that punch, expecting it to floor the smaller man. Instead, he found himself facing an immovable object. The realization that his raw power had been neutralized so effortlessly shook him to his core. The crowd's reaction mirrored Marcus's transformation. Initial fear gave way to awe, then a grudging respect for the guard. They had witnessed something extraordinary, a display of true strength that went beyond mere physical power. As the tension shifted, so did the dynamics of the confrontation. Marcus's aggressive posture deflated, his shoulders slumping as the futility of his actions sank in. The guard maintained his composure, his unwavering gaze fixed on Marcus. The guard's unwavering gaze held a storm of untold stories. His composure spoke volumes, revealing a stark difference between a street fighter and a battle-hardened soldier. The crowd was about to witness a masterclass in real combat prowess. Breaking the tense silence, the guard's voice cut through the air like a steel blade. "I could have stopped that punch before it left your shoulder." His words carried the weight of experience that went far beyond the palace grounds. Marcus, still reeling from his failed attack, struggled to process this unexpected response. The guard's calm demeanor stood in sharp contrast to Marcus's aggressive posturing. His quiet confidence, born of real battlefield experience, was like an unyielding wind extinguishing Marcus's flickering flame of bravado. This psychological impact was not lost on the onlookers, who sensed a shift in the power dynamic. As Marcus's confusion grew, the guard began to explain his combat experience. "While you were practicing your pub brawls, I was in Helmand Province watching RPGs tear through armored vehicles." The crowd's perception of the situation changed dramatically, evolving into something far more complex than a simple confrontation. Veterans in the crowd exchanged knowing glances, recognizing the guard's calmness as a sign of true strength. They understood that his discipline and restraint were the products of real combat training and harrowing experiences. Beneath his professional demeanor, a controlled anger simmered in the guard's voice. "Your street fighting means nothing to someone who's had to hold a friend's arteries closed while waiting for medevac." This revelation sent a chill through the crowd, driving home the psychological toll of real combat experiences. Marcus seemed to shrink with each word, his earlier aggression evaporating in the face of genuine valor. The guard's words painted a vivid picture of the brutal realities of war, a stark contrast to Marcus's street brawls. The crowd hung on every word, their earlier fear replaced by a mix of awe and respect for the man standing before them. As the guard prepared to act, a subtle shift in his stance signaled a transition from passive defense to active engagement. The anticipation in the air was palpable as the crowd held its collective breath, sensing that something momentous was about to unfold. In a fluid motion that belied his ceremonial uniform, the guard demonstrated what a real soldier could do. His movement was economical yet devastatingly effective. The impact of his punch echoed across the courtyard, a testament to the power of trained combat techniques over the brute force of street fighting. Marcus staggered backward, his eyes wide with shock and disbelief. The crowd gasped, then fell into stunned silence. In that moment, the difference between Marcus's aggressive posturing and the guard's disciplined strength was laid bare for all to see. The guard's stance shifted imperceptibly, a change so subtle only the most observant would notice. But in that microscopic adjustment lay the difference between ceremonial duty and lethal efficiency. The air crackled with potential energy as the guard's body became a conduit for a power Marcus couldn't comprehend. Marcus's eyes widened as realization dawned too late. The bully's aggressive posturing suddenly felt hollow in the face of true disciplined strength. The guard's movement began from the ground up, energy flowing through feet and legs hardened by years of standing watch. This was the precision strike of a trained combatant. Time slowed as the guard's fist connected with Marcus's jaw. Knuckles met bone with a sickening crack. The guard had targeted the mandibular nerve cluster with surgical precision. The crowd gasped collectively. Parents pulled their children closer, while others stood transfixed, unable to look away from the unfolding drama. Marcus staggered backward, his world spinning. Blood filled his mouth, metallic and warm. His tongue probed, finding sharp edges where teeth should be. Fragments clinked against his teeth, a horrifying reminder of the guard's power. The contrast between Marcus's earlier bravado and his current state was stark. Gone was the swaggering bully who had thought to intimidate a symbol of royal authority. In his place stood a broken man, face contorted in pain and disbelief. The brass knuckles lay forgotten on the ground, useless against real combat expertise. The guard maintained his professional demeanor, watching Marcus carefully. It was clear to everyone the confrontation was over. With calm precision, the guard spoke. "I'm afraid that might be difficult for a while. Your dental work appears to need significant attention." The matter-of-fact tone emphasized the lesson about true strength versus false bravado. Shock gave way to murmurs of appreciation for the guard's skill and restraint. Veterans nodded, recognizing military training in action. This was no mere ceremonial figure, but a combat-hardened soldier who had faced far worse than an overconfident street thug. Marcus spat blood and tooth fragments onto the pavement. Pain radiated through his jaw, intense and throbbing, yet it paled compared to the crushing weight of humiliation. His aggression had shattered like his teeth, leaving him to face the consequences of pushing too far. The crowd's reaction shifted. Initial fear transformed into a mix of horror and grudging respect. They had expected pageantry but witnessed controlled power. The guard stood as a living example that discipline trumps raw aggression, a lesson etched in blood and broken teeth. As the guard resumed his post with unwavering professionalism, Marcus was led away, his bravado shattered like his lost teeth. The crowd watched in stunned silence, their perception of strength forever altered. Veterans nodded in understanding, recognizing the hallmarks of true combat experience. The guard's calm demeanor spoke volumes about real power, discipline, and composure under pressure. The incident lingered, a stark reminder that appearances deceive. True strength, like a hidden wellspring, reveals itself when it matters most. As the commotion settled, onlookers pondered, what defines our own strength? Is it the facade we present, or the core we cultivate in silence?